At 78 degrees north, just a short flight from mainland Norway, lies one of the world's northernmost settlements. Welcome to Svalbard.
And then we are heading to the outskirts of the city. A bit of experience. You're going to see a bit more of the so-called wilderness.
From the airport bus to the hostel, every moment felt surreal. Join me as I explore this extraordinary Arctic wilderness. We were staying in Longyearbyen at Guest House 102, a cozy, welcoming base with a relaxed atmosphere and stunning mountain views. The first thing that struck me was how warm and welcoming it felt. In the vestibule, the boots and winter gear were lined up, a reminder that out here, adventure starts right at the front door. The dining room had a cozy communal atmosphere, with travelers from around the world relaxing, chatting, and planning their own Arctic adventures. Then it was time to check out my own room. Simple, comfortable, and exactly what I needed after a day of traveling to one of the most remote places on Earth. But the real highlight was the view from my window. Snow-covered mountains rising dramatically into the polar sky. At that moment, it truly sank in. I was in Svalbard. After settling into my room, it was not long before the Arctic air was calling. I decided to take the 1.5-kilometer walk into town. The route offered my first real taste of life in Svalbard. Crisp polar air, towering snow-covered mountains, and a landscape that felt both peaceful and wild at the same time. As I made my way towards Longyearbyen, I couldn't stop smiling. The walk follows what feels like the town's main strip, with some colorful buildings, hotels, shops, and everyday life stretched out along a single road beneath the towering mountains. Longyearbyen is the biggest settlement in Svalbard, with around 2,500 residents, making it one of the northernmost towns in the world. After all the planning and traveling, I was finally here, wandering through this incredible Arctic community on foot. Along the way, I stopped at the cozy Husky Cafe. It's filled with photos and stories of local sled dogs. From the town, I wandered down to the shores of the Arctic Ocean, surrounded by Svalbard's breathtaking mountains and vast open wilderness. It was absolutely spectacular. But the icy Arctic wind was relentless. Within minutes, I was reaching for my down jacket before continuing my walk along the coastline. Later that day, I met the rest of my expedition team in Longyearbyen. We'd all arrived that day from different places, and after some quick introductions, we walked back to the lodge together. As we made our way back to the lodge, we had the chance to get to know one another properly. We talked about where we traveled from, our previous adventures and outdoor experience, and what had inspired each of us to come to Svalbard. Some had plenty of Arctic or expedition experience, while others, this was something completely new. Before long, we were chatting about our hopes for the week ahead, what we wanted to see, what challenges we expected, and the memories we hoped to take home. It was the perfect start to the adventure, and by the time we reached the lodge, it already felt like we were traveling as a team rather than as strangers. We woke up to our first full day in the Arctic, excited for what lay ahead. After tucking into breakfast, we gathered for a short briefing with our expedition guide before setting off on our adventure.
To Nivian here, and then from there, the valley is splitting in two, and we go on the east.
After our briefing, we packed our bags, including our freeze-dried meals for lunch, which we would rehydrate later with hot water on the trail. We set off on our adventure, leaving the boundaries of Longyearbyen. At this point, we are entering polar bear territory. As you leave Longyearbyen, there are clearly marked warning signs of polar bear risks. For everyone's safety, our guides carried rifles as a last resort. Their primary role is to deter and scare away any bears if one is encountered, and every effort is made to avoid conflict. A polar bear would only ever be shot if there was an immediate threat to human life and there was absolutely no other option. After a rewarding climb, we finally reached the entrance to a frozen ice cave. Switching on our head torches, we stepped into a spectacular hidden underworld beneath the glacier. All around us, shimmering ice crystals sparkled in the light, while glassy blue chambers and twisting tunnels carved over centuries by glacial meltwater created an unforgettable underground landscape unlike anything I'd ever seen. The next morning, it was time for the adventure we'd all been waiting for. We packed our gear for several days of wild camping, making sure everything we needed was loaded into our backpacks. After a final briefing and introduction with our expedition guide, we were ready to leave the comforts of Longyearbyen behind.
Winter camping. Camping in the Arctic, which is actually one of the more cozy ways to camp. Definitely a lot warmer, a lot cleaner. Smells don't really linger around, so some of you will be happy about that. But yeah, so pretty much your name, where you're from, and mostly your expectations and background experience.
Our journey into the Arctic wilderness began with a drive to the trailhead, where our trek would officially begin. From there would be no roads, no buildings, just vast, untouched landscapes and the adventure that lay ahead. Once we reached the trailhead, our guide showed us how to fit and secure the polka, a sled used to carry much of our expedition equipment. We learned how to attach it to a harness around our waist before getting used to walking in snowshoes. It was a very different way of moving, and the snowshoes, combined with the weight of the polka, made every step more demanding than a normal hike. With everyone comfortable and ready, we set off to the Arctic wilderness. For the next 4 hours, we trekked across the snow-covered landscape, gradually finding our rhythm as we pulled our polkas through the pristine wilderness before stopping for a well-earned lunch break. After lunch, we tightened our harness, clipped ourselves back onto our polkas, and prepared for what would be the toughest section of the day, a long, demanding climb uphill. Just before the ascent, I decided to take off my snowshoes. On the steeper slope, they were making each step feel even heavier, and without them, I found it much easier to keep a steady rhythm as I pulled the polka behind me. Slowly but surely, we climbed higher, each step bringing us deeper into the vast Arctic wilderness. There is something about the Arctic that quietly changes your perspective. Surrounded by nothing but snow, mountains, and silence, the usual noise of everyday life begins to fade. Out here, there is nowhere else to be, nothing else to do but keep putting one foot in front of the other. It was a rare feeling of being completely present. After 7 long hours on the trail, we finally arrived at our campsite. There wasn't much time to rest. Our guides gave us a quick orientation before we got straight to work pitching our tents and settling into our new home. With our tents up, we gathered in the main tent to relax. Over hot drinks, we reflected on the trek, shared stories, had plenty of laughs, and got to know each other a little better. The next morning, we set off to the summit of Trollsteinen, an 850-meter mountain, and I couldn't wait to reach the top. The night before had been far from restful. Even with a hot water Nalgene bottle tucked into my sleeping bag, I was cold for most of the night and barely slept. It was a reminder not to underestimate the Arctic. No matter how well prepared you think you are, the cold has a way of finding you. Tired but excited, I packed up my gear and set off with the group towards the summit. As we approached the summit, the landscape became dramatic, almost ominous. The summit rock itself is named for the large troll-like stone tower resting at the highest point of the ridge. We carefully made our way along the narrow ridge with a steep drop-off before climbing onto the summit rock itself. From the top, we were rewarded with breathtaking panoramic vistas across Svalbard and its surrounding peaks. It was a truly beautiful moment. It's difficult to put into words the magnitude of this journey. Standing on the summit, surrounded by glaciers and mountains, it was a meditative flow-like state, fully present and completely absorbed in the moment. It felt almost unbelievable. Unbelievable that I was standing here. Unbelievable that I was witnessing a landscape that so few people will ever see. It felt as though I had crossed into another world, like stepping onto the surface of another planet. My heart was full, filled with a deep sense of gratitude for being able to experience something so extraordinary. The next day, we pulled our polkas back to Longyearbyen, where we thanked our guides and said our goodbyes after an unforgettable few days in the Arctic. The next morning, we swapped snowshoes for snowmobiles as we headed out for a full day exploring the vast Arctic landscape from a completely different perspective. We stopped to explore fascinating icelands, a perfectly clear layer of solid ice trapped beneath the snow. There are hidden wonders waiting to be discovered. Svalbard is a place that will stay with me forever. It is impossible to describe just how vast it is and how small you feel, and it has left me with a profound sense of perspective, humility, and gratitude. Thank you for joining me on this unforgettable journey.